This episode of London Real is sponsored by Xbrain. If you live in Europe or the UK, get all of your favorite Onnit products like Alpha Brain, Shroom Tech Sport, even the Bulletproof Coffee from Xbrain. You get it in a matter of days, no foreign exchange, no customs, no problem. Go to xbrain.co.uk and check it out.
London Real, one of the coolest up-and-coming podcasts.
You do like a screenshot. Now I'm wearing orange glasses with a blue headband. I totally need a superhero name. I'm sorry.
Hey, it's Brian Rose from London Real. We're just finishing up here, putting the final touches on the episode with Dave Asprey, also known as the Bulletproof Executive. He was a lot of fun to have here. He sat in that chair there just last week, and Dave's an interesting guy for people that don't know much about him. He spent $300,000 hacking his own body. He increased his IQ, he says, by 20 points, lost 100 pounds, and I think made his brain work better and said he became a better father. And Dave's a very interesting guy, a controversial guy. He's known for his Bulletproof Coffee, which I've been drinking for the last 2 days, but he's got a whole bulletproof lifestyle, and it's more than just coffee, and it's more than just other things that he's known for. He's been very open about taking the narcolepsy medicine Modafinil, and also known as Provigil. He's got a lot of funny things like what he was wearing there, which is a scanner that you put on the front of your head to increase blood flow. And he's just got lots of really interesting ideas. And I really like Dave because it feels like he's not really selling you anything. You feel like you just want to listen to him. And he gives a lot of information away for free. I'm going to give this Bulletproof Coffee thing a try. I think it's nice to shake up your routines. I like to think my diet is clean and good, but you know, I think we can always make changes and do better. So Dave has been kind enough to give away 5 bags of his Bulletproof Coffee. So we will be sending these out worldwide to the best quote that you tweet out from the episode. So listen to it, tell us what you think. Tweet out the quote, put the bit.ly link or the YouTube link of the episode, and then put at Bulletproof Exec, EXEC, that's Dave's handle, and we're going to pick one a day and ship this coffee anywhere in the world. So get involved and do that, and I really hope you enjoy the episode with Dave. He's such a character. You know that I love the products at Onnit. I'm a big fan of the Shroom Tech Sport. I take it before I train. I love the Alpha Brain. I love the Hemp Force products. And I love all of that stuff. But I live here in London. And if you live in Europe or the UK, you know getting Alpha Brain and anything from Onnit is very difficult. So I'd like to welcome our latest sponsor, which is Xbrain. These guys have all the products that Onnit has, but they can ship here in the UK and anywhere in Europe. So that means you don't have to wait 4 or 5 weeks, which is what I've waited before for shipments from the States. You've got no customs issues. You have no foreign currency issues. I literally had my stuff within days. And they have everything there at Xbrain, including the Bulletproof Coffee. They've got the MCT oil that you put in the coffee. They've got this new T Plus supplement that you probably heard Joe talking about. They got the coffee itself, Xbrain, you know, you name it. So I'm really happy to have them on as a sponsor. If you want to check them out, go to xbrain.co.uk and you can order from them. Like I said, they're totally affiliated with Onnit. They have all the products, and you can just get it quickly. And so from now on, that's where I'm going to be ordering all my stuff. I hope you check it out. And for the next month, I'm going to be drinking Bulletproof. So if you want to join me on the challenge, it's the MCT oil, it's the grass-fed butter, and it's the Bulletproof. And I'm just going to see if I can use it to kind of do that intermittent fast in the morning. I'm going to drink it, and then I'm going to not eat until early afternoon. And I really think shaking up these diet things is going to be fun to try. And you can go from there. Now, if you want to start putting headbands on or taking Provigil, that's your own business. But I'll be bulletproofing and posting my pictures for the next few weeks. So that's it. You know where we are on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm still getting crazy volunteers for interning. Please send me an email at info@londonreal.tv. 2 guests recently were booked within a week after I got tweets or emails, and that was the hip hop preacher himself, and also Colin Pyle, who rode his motorcycle across China with his brother Ryan. So please tweet at me, send me emails. I am listening, and I respond to almost all of them. So please do that. I'll be looking forward to it. And for now, I give you the Bulletproof Executive Dave Asprey. Okay, here we go. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. With me today is Paul G., who grew up in Texas via Russia. He studied mathematics at NYU and is now completing his master's degree in London in computer science at Imperial College. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Which is a good school, right?
It's not bad.
Okay. And Paul may or may not have some recent experience with Provigil, but we will talk about that later. And our guest today is Mr. Dave Asprey, the Bulletproof Executive himself. Dave went from a fat guy with a failing brain to being a successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur, investor, and senior executive. That's pretty cool right there. Also using brain systems thinking, he spent 15 years and $300,000 to hack his own biology, which including upgrading his brain by 20 IQ points, lowering your biological age, and losing 100 pounds without using calories or exercise. Did I get that right? And welcome to London.
Thanks. Yeah, you got it right.
All of it?
All of it.
Okay. How is London? And what's it like making that trip? You came from British Columbia direct, or?
I came from Vancouver. I just did a small puddle jumper over to Vancouver, went straight to London, hopped on another plane 45 minutes later to Edinburgh. Spent a day there, flew down here. So it's been a pretty intense week so far. I've been in like back-to-back meetings talking about upgrading your performance in your brain with a bunch of investment bankers and hedge fund traders out here in London. It's been a pretty fun week.
That sounds cool, actually.
Yeah, those guys are fun to work with because they get it and they're real quantitative. So like, show me the numbers. I'm like, well, you got numbers coming off your body as well as numbers that come out of these bank accounts you work with. So it's kind of a pretty interesting dynamic to say, what if you did exactly what you're doing for trading, but you did it up here? And they're like, I want to do that.
Yeah, Paul and I both spent some time in banking, and we all know it's about the P&L at the end of the day, which is profit and loss. And you can talk all you want, but the numbers on a daily basis tell you whether you're doing something right or wrong, which sounds like the perfect guys for your system because they want feedback, right?
Right.
They want to change things, so that's cool. I wanted to know this. You said you started the Bulletproof Executive blog in January 2010 as a quest to upgrade the world. And I was wondering if you could quickly walk us through your personal story. What is biohacking and how you came to where you are today?
So here's the thing. I spent a good half my life being overweight and basically having brain fog and not being anywhere near the level of performance I'm capable of. And it's not really fair that I made $6 million when I was 26 and I got to spend about $300,000 upgrading myself. So I've had unusual access both to experts because I run an anti-aging nonprofit group. So I've had 10 years of talking with top leaders in those fields, as well as all this money to throw at the problem. So yeah, I hacked myself really extensively. Like my brain is different, my face looks different than it did. You know, I'm 100 pounds lighter. All that stuff is real, but most people are not going to be able to do that because they don't have 10 years and $300,000 to spend on that. So I wasted a lot of that money because it didn't work, right? So maybe I could just do the Cliffs Notes and give that to people. And that's why all this stuff on the site's free. Like there's 200,000 words of blog on the site and all kinds of forums. And it's all there just because I think most people, if they know how, actually want to be high performance. I don't believe fat people are fat because they're lazy or they deserve it. They're fat because they keep doing stuff that doesn't work. So you might as well measure whether it works. When it doesn't work, whoever told you to, go for a gentle walk 3 times a week and eat rabbit food, if you measure it and it doesn't work and your butt's bigger than it was last year and you've actually been doing it, it's time to give the middle finger to whoever told you that and find someone who really knows what's going on. Dude, lost 100 pounds, kept it off for 10 years. It works.
Did you ever think about keeping this knowledge secret, and that way you could fly around the world and meet with these hedge fund guys and give them the secret knowledge?
I thought about it, but here's
That's
the deal.
honest.
Dude. I want to live in a world where there's lots of people who are not so exhausted and tired that they just can barely get by. Like I actually think that I'm in a better place when the people around me are kicking more ass too. So if you intrinsically think that people are good, then you want to empower them. And if you intrinsically think everyone's a jerk and they're out to get you and take what you have, then you're going to keep it secret. And the bottom line is I help a lot of people, to the point that I get emails like every day from people I don't know who are like, I lost 45 pounds in 2 months and my brain turned back on and I got a $30,000 raise when I got a new job because I have more energy. And like, thank you. What can I do to help? I'm like, that's why this blog is here. And, I have a full-time job. I'm a senior executive at a big tech company. So I do this to help people. And, the fact that some people like to buy my coffee too is, an amazing thing. But like, this is just about helping. Like, it's about sharing the wealth and the knowledge that I've been fortunate enough to have.
A lot of these diets and sort of regimens to life usually require a lot of adherence.
Yeah.
How do you build that into your system?
Adherence is pretty easy when you have no food cravings ever. When you can go 18 hours without eating and be like, I guess I could eat now. So building resilience in and removing the things that cause you to be weak doesn't take a lot of adherence, because once they're gone, once you feel for one day that bulletproof state, that high performance state that I talk about, you just need it once, because that becomes like your new goal. So if the best you've ever felt is here, and then you have bulletproof coffee for breakfast and you stop eating toxins for a week and maybe you do some neurofeedback or something, and all of a sudden you have a day and you're like, holy crap, I didn't know life was like that. And then the next day you're not there, you're only here, and you're like, what do I do to get back there? And then you get here and you're like, oh my God, there's more up there. If no one ever experiences that, you don't know it's possible. So the whole point of all this is to just feel it once. Once you do that, adherence is no big deal. It just happens.
It seems like the foundation now of the Bulletproof Exec is the Bulletproof Coffee. And so we might as well just jump in and talk about it, because I've been hearing about your stuff for a while, but if you walked up to someone on the street and said, this cup of coffee is going to change your life, they would initially think you're crazy. So I was wondering if you could talk about the theory behind the Bulletproof Coffee, how you make it. I've seen your videos on YouTube, how you make it, and with your stir, your battery-powered stir.
Yeah.
That's cool, by the way. But yeah, tell us about Bulletproof Coffee.
So Bulletproof Coffee is a really precise recipe that I designed. It requires upgraded coffee beans. I'm drinking some of it right now, actually.
You didn't bring us any.
Sorry, they took it at customs. I'm kidding. It's totally legal to fly with coffee anywhere on the planet, and I fly with ground coffee all the time, and no one's ever even probed in there to find drugs. So I'm pretty sure it's legit. But here's the thing. You need beans that don't have toxins in them, because 91.7% of coffee from South America, this is not my research, this is a study that I reference on the website, comes with toxic mold. And you might say, well, roasting kills the mold. Yeah, it does. But it doesn't kill the poison that the mold made. And unfortunately, we turned on some really nasty toxic molds when we started spraying antifungals on our crops to increase agricultural yields 30 years ago. So we're basically dealing with that now, because the stuff that grows on coffee when they ferment it creates histamine, which triggers allergies, and it has things like ochratoxin, which is not even regulated in the US, and it has things like aflatoxin, which is regulated but not tested that well in coffee. So if you're drinking coffee that has all these performance-enhancing benefits, but it has these other things in it that aren't actually coffee, they just come from the way coffee's been processed because we didn't have better ways, then you end up with, like, I feel good from the coffee, and then I crash, and I feel good, and I crash. And the crash makes you actually want sugar, and it makes you crave things. You don't want to do that, including like just get on the coffee yo-yo. I gave up coffee for 5 years, even though I love coffee. Like, it's been kind of a religion for me. I paid for my computer science studies selling caffeine t-shirts. So caffeine, my drug of choice. I sold those to 12 countries over the web. It turns out it was the first product ever sold over the internet. So I'm like the first e-commerce guy. It was either me or Virtual Vineyards, the guys who became wine.com. Like on the same day we started selling.
How did you take payments?
How did I take payments? What was the name of it? Virtual currency. There's the name of
Bitcoin.
some bank. It was the very first, not Bitcoin, I wish. It was the very first online payments you could do. People like could fill out and fax you a copy of their check. Like, wow. It was so old school for e-commerce back then. It was insane. But there wasn't a browser either, so that was part of the problem. So anyway, I did this. So coffee's been a part of my life forever. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to do here? I'm going to have to give up coffee, and that sucks. So after about 5 years of not drinking coffee, I'd drink coffee once and be like, dude, I'm rocking. I love this. And the next day I'd drink it and I'd crash. And it finally had occurred to me that it's not me that's the variable, it's the coffee that's the variable. So I put on my biohacking hat and I read all this agricultural research, all this biochemical research. I figured out the mold problem. And then I created something called the Bulletproof process to make coffee that doesn't have performance-robbing toxins in it. Not to mention what ochratoxin does to your kidneys and all that. And here's a quick thing. If you drink coffee and you have to go pee right away, that's your kidneys going, get this out of here. It's not the coffee that's so much the diuretic, it's the toxins in the coffee. So I figured out that, wow, this is kind of amazing stuff. You start with this coffee, and then you add 2 ingredients. One of them is grass-fed butter. Depends on what country you're in. You can buy it in most countries. Even in Asia, they usually import Anchor butter from New Zealand. Around here, you carry Gold Irish butter. Some of the British butters are grass-fed. And you can usually find it if you look around a bit at a gourmet grocery store.
Okay.
You add 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons,
Okay.
sometimes 5 if you're like exercising heavy and you're not going to be sleeping for a while. You just go for it. And you'll find over time that you actually like less butter in it. When you first want the butter that much, it's because your body's like, give me more of that because I can make better cellular membranes with saturated fats because they're stable, they don't oxidize. So after a while, you replace your cells themselves, like the outer layer of the cells, and then you're like, I don't need quite as much butter. So I'm down to about 1 or 2 tablespoons, whereas when I first started this, I was like 6. Like, I'm just going to go for it.
That's a lot of butter.
So it was amazing.
It's thick. It's thick.
Yeah,
in the
it's
beginning.
creamy and amazing. And then you've got to add MCT oil to it.
Okay.
MCT is medium chain triglyceride. And you get a lot of people out there who are like, I'll just mix like coconut oil in and, I'll call it Bulletproof Coffee. Well, it's not the Bulletproof recipe. It's actually not Bulletproof Coffee because MCT oil is officially about 60% of coconut oil. And you'll hear this all over the place. But here's the thing, there's 4 lengths of medium chains and only 2 of them have the real effects you're looking for. 15% of coconut oil has the active ingredients that we're looking for. So I take straight MCT oil, which is the most active part, is 6 times stronger than coconut oil, and I put a tablespoon of that in there. Why? Because it would taste gross with 6 tablespoons of coconut oil in there, plus, you'd probably throw up. So you put that in, you blend it, you get a huge head of foam on there. It's creamy, just like the creamiest latte ever. But, okay, flavor's one thing, but you don't have any food cravings or any hunger at all. You just have that for breakfast. No sugar, no protein. And your body doesn't think you've eaten. So you get all the benefits of fasting, like an intermittent fast, except you get all the energy from the fat. And MCT oil is the only fat out there that's burned without going through the liver. So basically your body kind of treats it like a carb, but it's an oil, and it helps to trigger ketosis, which is fat burning mode in your body. So what you get is this huge boost in like cognitive energy, to the extent that there's a guy out there who wrote a book about the singularity, about the economic impact of artificial intelligence, like a super cerebral economics kind of textbook. And it's killing me that Singularity Rising is the name of the book, but I'm forgetting the guy's last name. His first name's James.
Yeah, I forgot it too.
And right in the middle of the book, he just sends it to me. I don't know him. He sends me this book, says, Dave, look on page 207 or whatever it is. And you open it up and it says at the end of the chapter, you know what? Thanks to Dave Asprey's Bulletproof Coffee recipe, I just cut my dose of Adderall in half. Adderall is like prescription methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying that like this recipe replaces drugs. I'm just saying it gives you so much brain energy that someone who is on a prescription with his doctor like made his own decision to say, wow, I feel so good. Like I want the coffee. And that's kind of amazing stuff, but it is so strong that you just get this amazing focus. I've got mixed martial arts guys, like some of Joe Rogan's followers, who literally called me up. Guys like Jason Lambert. He's a former UFC heavyweight who now fights in Southern California. He's like, Dave, can I put your logo on my trunk? It's like, your coffee rocks my world. I've got 2 or 3 other guys like that who are like Bulletproof sponsored guys because the coffee just completely did. They're like, please, can I have some coffee? I'm like, dude, of course. Like, I'll send you some coffee.
How many calories are in that cup? Just as a rough idea.
It really depends.
It depends on how much butter you put in.
Yeah, it's pretty variable.
A few hundred?
Probably more than that.
Okay.
It depends on what you're going to do and all. I eyeball it. I used to measure it. I'd be like 80 grams of butter when I was making the full recipe, 30 grams of MCT, and 600, between 400 and 600 grams or milliliters of coffee. And you put it all in a Blendtec blender. You want a big badass blender when you can do that, because the more foam you get, the better. And it turns out the first step of digestion of fat is when the bile breaks fat into tiny little droplets like that. They're called micelles.
Okay.
If you blend it, you're helping your digestion of fat. And most people don't know how to digest fat anymore because they bought into the low-fat propaganda and they eat basically sticks and twigs with a light dose of low-quality protein, like a chicken breast or something on there. And then they walk around with a metabolism that just isn't ready to burn fat. When they get it past that first level of digestion, their body's like, oh yeah, I know what to do with this, and it goes right to the head. If you brew the coffee right, you brew it with a metal filter. And coffee oils have some amazing effects in them. They're called diterpenes, and it's caffestrol and cowahol. These things go into the brain, and there are studies out there that show that caffestrol and cowahol have an effect on inflammation in the brain. So if you brew your coffee with a paper filter, then the paper filter absorbs the diterpenes. You don't get these things. If you brew your coffee with a metal filter, then these things, which are present in all coffee, can go into the brain and do their business. So if you use a recipe like this that's designed to turn off inflammation in the brain. Oh, by the way, in butter, butyric acid, which is why we use butter instead of cream, one of the reasons anyway, turns off inflammation in the brain and causes gut healing. And this is, a normal food, that any grass-fed butter is going to have. So all of a sudden you're like, wow, I helped my gut, I helped my brain, and I got this energy that's like nothing else. So people do it one time and they're hooked, and they think it's going to be gross, but it tastes amazing.
And can you put anything sweet in there? I saw you've got like a PDF file, I think, if they sign up for your newsletter, where it shows the whole Bulletproof diet as well.
Yeah.
And I saw like no artificial sweeteners, which I'm guilty of, sorry, and no sugar, I'm guessing, as well. So you just have to get over needing any kind of sweets.
It actually tastes really good without it. Part of the problem is that coffee is, most coffee's kind of gross because it's acidic. Like, they use crap beans and then they burn it to hide the acidic taste. Like, that's why a certain green logo coffee company has the dark roast. It's not that dark roasts are sexier. They're not even better for you. A medium roast has more intact oils and better antioxidants. But the dark roast is to hide the acidic taste. Beans like mine that have never been fermented that go through the Bulletproof process aren't acidic. So it doesn't need sugar. And a lot of people have said, just when they drink it black, like, this is the first time I've had coffee that doesn't need sugar. So that's part of it. But if you want to sweeten it, there's a way to do it. You can get sugar alcohols. It's called xylitol or erythritol. Xylitol comes from, hopefully, hardwood. Good xylitol comes from hardwood. Bad xylitol comes from Chinese GMO corn. Don't eat the corn-based xylitol. Eat the wood-based xylitol. Okay. You put it in there, it looks like sugar, about 40% sweeter than sugar. If you have a lot of xylitol and you've never had it before, you're going to be running to the bathroom because it'll give you the runs. By the way, too much MCT oil will also give you the runs. So if you're a Bulletproof Coffee virgin, you put in a half a cup of MCT and half a cup of xylitol. I want a video of what happens. It's going to be bad. But if you put in, start slow on the MCT to find out what works for you. And then xylitol, same thing. Put in a couple of teaspoons, and you can get as much sweet taste as you want. Erythritol is a similar thing. It comes from corn, but most erythritol comes from GMO corn, so you got to watch out.
And stevia, you're okay with as well?
Stevia is totally legit. Okay. Unfortunately, it's like 20-30% of people have a gene where stevia tastes bitter. Like, I eat stevia, I'm like, bleh.
Yeah, I don't like it.
The other thing that I add a lot of the time now, and it's kind of a sin, like, I'll brew black coffee because I like black coffee, and then I'll make Bulletproof coffee because I like the taste of that, and I also like the performance effects of the fats. But so I'm a coffee purist, coffee snob and all that. But I take the upgraded vanilla, which is another product that I made. Vanilla has a serious mold problem, and real vanilla, like the herb, has a very different profile than vanillin, which is a chemical product that's basically like smells like vanilla that they sell most of the time. Vanilla extract is imitation. So when you get the real stuff, it's like a dark, rich powder. And you put that in there too, and it adds like different notes. Do that with a little bit of xylitol. It's like a really rich vanilla kind of thing. And that's nice.
And you're having this coffee every day. Do you skip days, and do you miss it when you skip the days?
I don't skip days. What the hell, man?
All right.
I mean, No, I have coffee for breakfast with butter every single day. And I used to stop and I guess I should have, eggs and bacon or something, but I feel better when I have coffee with butter for breakfast. It doesn't trigger all the energy that gets used by digestion. I just get this laser focus, and then it's lunchtime, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I guess I could eat, or maybe I'll just wait till dinner. Like, it just turns off any need to pay attention to food and hunger and all that kind of stuff. It's just convenient, and I like the energy a lot.
Okay. Now, I don't want to start a biohacker feud, but Tim Ferriss was here a couple months ago, and he has this 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up thing that he talks about. And I think I understand the theory behind that, and I think it's to keep people from, eating those bad carbs right when they wake up. I think it's kind of a bit of a trick, but yours is obviously very different to that suggestion. What are your thoughts on 30 before 30?
If you're lifting heavy, go for it, man. Having some protein is a really good idea. And you don't necessarily want to do intermittent fasting every single day, depending on what you're doing. There's another school of thought, and I'm kind of one of those guys that says even if you are lifting, you should do bulletproof intermittent fasting. Don't eat anything except coffee and butter, and then at the end of that period, before you eat lunch or dinner, lift heavy and do what you're going to do, and then eat, and you'll get the maximum benefit there because of insulin sensitivity and everything else. So, tough call. But if you're someone who feels like you need breakfast, and I'd say maybe 20% of people, particularly women, they actually do a little better when they have protein for breakfast some of the time. But for the most part, if you eat protein, one nasty secret about protein is protein raises your cortisol levels. Not as much as sugar does. Sugar raises it the most. Protein raises it the next most. And fat doesn't raise it very much at all. So in the morning, if you have a bunch of protein, you are going to spike your cortisol when you might not want to be spiking your cortisol. At the same time, you sort of look at this and say, too much protein or the wrong kind of protein is inflammatory. And that's why the Bulletproof diet focuses on moderate protein, but extremely high quality protein. And people who listen to the show probably know not all proteins are the same. But if you look at like the ends of the spectrum, like here's a bowl of like snake venom, that's actually protein. Okay. And here's a bowl of, collagen protein, which is kind of amazing stuff. In fact, I'm launching a grass-fed collagen protein coming up here in just a little while. And the difference in biological effects, the difference in amino acids is profound. So when someone says, eat 30 grams of protein, like, was that tofu?
It's a broad statement.
It's just too broad. So what protein would you do? Would it be hydrolyzed? Would it not be hydrolyzed? Does it have MSG? Does it have anti-nutrients and toxins in it or not? So bottom line is, if I'm going to have protein in the morning, and I do that maybe once or twice a week, especially if I've decided I'm going to exercise, for my one time that week, if I get around to it, I'll put 30 grams of collagen in the coffee. Collagen's heat stable at those temperatures of coffee, and it adds no flavor at all the way I do it because it's all pre-hydrolyzed.
When I think of collagen, I think of like some amorphous amoeba-like liquid. Is it not that bad, or?
No, because it's hydrolyzed, it mixes smooth in water. It's not like a clump of gelatin. Gelatin contains collagen, but it's not broken down. So the stuff that I finally managed to create, it's been like a 6-month process to get it right. It's from grass-fed cows, low temperature the whole way, and we use enzymes to cleave it. So you get all the di and tripeptides, all the collagen peptides that you're looking for, and it's totally legit to put in coffee. So you blend the coffee up till it's really nice and foamy, drop the protein in, and this is important if you're going to add protein to a blender, add it at the end, because the more you chop up a protein like the upgraded whey stuff or any good quality protein powder, you blend the crap out of that stuff, you break it up. You actually want the di and tripeptides. If you damage them through mechanical agitation, you're getting less benefit from it. So maybe I sound like a really picky guy, but seriously, you're making a smoothie. Does it really matter what you put in there in what order? No. Put the protein in last and just blend it a little bit, and you'll get a better result from doing it that way. So that's what I do. Bulletproof coffee, add that in. I get a lot of people who, I haven't tried this, but they really like to put in the hemp force protein that Onnit makes.
Yeah.
And that's, in terms of vegetarian proteins, hemp has the most globulin of any of them. So that would be the vegetarian protein choice, but I don't know why you would actually go for vegetarian and protein at the same time when you could get animal-based protein that's probably more effective in my experience.
And just roughly, what's an example of a good protein and a bad protein that you would eat later in the day?
A good protein. Well, I try not to eat bad protein, but tofu would be it, or corn, that QUORN stuff.
Okay.
That stuff is not food. There's all sorts of weird allergy problems happening.
You don't like any of these derivatives, these turkey bacons or any of that
I
stuff?
try to not eat processed foods.
Yeah,
and the turkey bacons, all this, you look at the first ingredients, wheat gluten in half of them. It's like, do you not understand basic human fuel? like the fact that it has gluten in it only means that more animals died to make it than if it was made out of beef. If you eat a cow that didn't eat grain, a grass-fed cow, you can eat 2 pounds of cow a day and you kill 0.7 animals per year, okay? If you eat one of these amazing vegetarian gluten-based grain concoction things with soy and corn and whatever else in it, the number of animals killed to cut down that field, the habitat destruction that was caused to do monoculture for that, turtles, rabbits, mice, insects. Some of those bunnies had faces and everything. Right?
I've never heard of it looked at this way.
But it's actually really sad. And the person who taught me this was actually in Tibet. So I was at a Tibetan monastery. I spent some time, doing that kind of thing. And I got out of this 10-day vegetarian retreat in Nepal where I was learning about Buddhist meditation style. And the whole time it's vegetarian, and everyone in the room, it's super quiet while meditating, and you hear and then over there, it's everyone there was farting while meditating, and it was really messing with getting in the zone. Yeah. And it's because of this vegetarian food. So then I get to hardcore high altitude Tibet, and I asked the Lama, the head of the monastery, that's a yak skin on your prayer pole. What's up with that? This do not kill thing. You're a hypocrite. And he totally laughs at me, and he goes, "One death feeds everyone," and he just walks off. And you know what? He's right. You look at the total animals killed in a system of feeding you, it's not just what's on your plate, it's what died to get to your plate. And what you're doing is you're burning fossil fuels to fertilize the soil, unless you're doing all organic, which you might be an organic vegan or vegetarian. But even then, the whole place used to be a forest. It used to be a wild prairie, and you've destroyed all that to be able to grow something because you're afraid to basically eat something with a face.
Which is gluten in this case, or any
gluten or corn or any of the grains that are out there. And then a tractor comes through. And I know this because like in the South, I went and I visited a cousin a while back, and we went out after there was a threshing machine that went through the field with a big bag, and we picked up frogs and snakes, and we had frog leg for dinner. But they were all killed by the tractor. They were just like sitting there flopping around, and I didn't really see any bunnies that time, but it's well known. Like there's field kills all over the place. Okay. So like you got to think about the whole system of what you do. It's not just what's right in front of you. Like if you open your mind up a little bit, you realize that you'll perform better and live longer as a human being. You'll actually need less food if you eat more fat. And if you're doing grass-fed meat, you're actually helping to prevent desertification. There's a new TED Talk about this that just came out. And it turns out, this poor guy, I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but if you do a search for TED Talk, elephant soil destruction, you'll find it. In the 1970s, this guy went to Africa and looked really carefully at the carrying capacity of the land and said, we have to kill 40,000 elephants in order to make this reserve. So in his TED Talk, he says it's the largest mistake he's ever made in his life. And like he's like almost choked up about it because they killed all the elephants to make room for the ones that were there, and the land turned to desert. And what they recently discovered is that if you have animals with hooves on soil, they break up the algae that forms on the top of the soil and the water can penetrate. If you don't, the water goes off. And they have all these videos and photos now of places, look, we added cows back in and now it's a lush prairie. And without the cows, it's a barren landscape. So cows and sheep and goats are an important part of soil ecology. So if you care about the earth, your job is to eat grass-fed meat because we need more grass-fed cows walking around where there aren't farms.
Right back at you. I like that. So grass-fed beef might be one of the proteins you would eat later in the day.
Oh, dude, ribeye.
Ribeye,
Absolutely.
okay, cool. But
covered in guacamole with some home-cured bacon on top.
Okay, all right. Now you're talking. But no, not a chicken breast from the non-organic farm. That's bad protein or protein you don't want to
chicken in general, even if it's like, raised by one-armed monks, who like petted its feathers and all this stuff, we're not dinosaurs. Like in terms of biological compatibility, the proteins in chicken breast aren't that good, and the fats in chicken are mostly omega-6 oils. I go out of my way to not eat omega-6. My omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is like 1.28 to 1 in my blood. Anti-aging guys are trying to get theirs down as low as 4 to 1, and the typical American has 40 to 1 because they're eating crap oils. So omega-6 oils are not particularly your friend. They create extra oxidative stress in the body, and they don't make good proper cell membranes. So tiny amounts of omega-6 are going to be present no matter what, and those are enough for your body to do whatever it needs.
Okay, and salmon, you like salmon as well?
As long as it's not farmed.
Okay.
So we got a problem with farmed salmon. And you just hit a hot button for me, man. Did you plan this?
Not at all. What's the problem, Dave, you have with salmon?
So I live in British Columbia, up by Victoria, and sockeye salmon is the best salmon you can eat.
Sockeye.
Yeah.
That's the way it looks or something like that.
It's a species of salmon. And the reason is that they don't live that long. They spend a lot of their life in fresh water, and they have the lowest mercury count and the highest amount of antioxidants and the most omega-3 in them because of what they eat. So they're like the perfect food. In the last 7 years where I live, the count of wild sockeye salmon is down 90%. And it's down 90% because some Norwegian fish farming companies put Atlantic salmon farms right along the river where the normal fish migrate. And they're basically killing an entire species. And this sucks because those natural fish, the wild ones that swim by, they pick up viruses that cause their hearts to turn to mush, so they can't swim upstream. So they die full of eggs, but they don't spawn.
So where are they putting these farms?
Why?
Where?
Along the Fraser River and all along basically between Vancouver Island and the mainland. There's this channel where most of the sockeye swim, and they're all getting infected with European viruses because these like ecologically destructive Norwegian companies are coming in there and they're saying, well, we'll just raise the fish here. But there's a big cloud of bacteria and antibiotics, and they don't allow scientists to come in and test the fish. The reason we know these viruses and bacteria are even present is that a local researcher sat outside one of the fish farms, waited for a bald eagle to swoop in, pick up the fish, and then drop it outside so it was legal for them to test the fish. And they found bacteria and viruses that are still present after the salmon is frozen. So if you're eating sushi made from Norwegian farm salmon, you're getting strange bacteria that are not killed by freezing, and we have no idea what they do to you. So on top of that, I'm pissed off. They're killing the sockeye that live by my house that I want to eat. So if you're from Norway, you should be ashamed. By the way, my wife is from Sweden, and they invaded you guys, all right?
Oh, man. And they have too much oil in Norway. No,
By the way, I love Norwegians.
We're not going down that route.
But I'm pissed about your company, so get your salmon out of my water.
so people should just keep that in mind, and when they buy Norwegian salmon, they should not be buying it.
I would just say flat out, like, boycott most Norwegian products until they fix this. It's as big as the Japanese killing whales, to be honest. Because these salmon in Canada and in Alaska, too, are the foundational species. No more bald eagles, no more bears if you don't have salmon. Like, everything feeds off them. They bring all this nutrition in from the ocean, and the whole ecosystem is based on this. So they're basically decimating a whole country. And the sad thing is, in Canada, we have these people called First Nations. And these are basically like the American Indians in the US, but they're called First Nations. And Canada has been incredibly mean, historically, to the First Nations, just like the American government has been mean to American Indians.
Yeah.
And it's entirely unfair and kind of just downright evil what both countries have done. Both countries have done their best to try and make reparations for past wrongs. But the problem now is that these native people who have rights to the salmon and whose whole traditions and cultures are built around this, they're the ones who are paying the price the most. And the one who makes the money is basically some big companies in Norway. So I think it's actually time for people to really pay attention to this stuff, because where you get your food affects the entire quality of what's on the planet. So if your sushi made from Norwegian farmed salmon, or Whole Foods, for God's sake, which advertises ethically farmed salmon, yeah, my ass, what you're doing there is you're basically contributing to a destruction of a very eco-diverse part of the world. So you got to be careful about where you eat, like what you eat. Where does it come from? It really matters.
You heard it here first from Dave Asprey. Stay away from the
people don't
Norwegians.
get to
Plus, they're all tall and blonde. What the hell?
people don't get to research every bit of their food intake before they do it. I mean, you have done so, but most people don't get to do that. They don't drink Bulletproof coffee. So what do you like? How do you go about finding these things out, especially when these companies go out of their way not to publicize it?
Pretty much, if it says it's farmed, it's probably not good for you. If it's meat and it's not pastured or grass-fed and it's not wild, then just don't eat it. You don't have to eat meat to survive. I'll go to a restaurant, I'll take a large plate of vegetables, and they bring you like 4 stalks of broccoli. You're like, that's a large plate, and you want to charge me $12 for that? Like, no. Like, I'm only going to have vegetables and maybe a little bit of rice, the least toxic of the grains, with some safe starch in it. So, and by the way, you don't have any good butter, so I brought like a stick of Kerrygold with me. So could you bring me like a lot of broccoli and a little rice, and I'll just throw my butter on there? You'll be full for days. You don't have to eat protein every day.
Okay.
You'll be fine, right? So it's not a question of, there's only farmed salmon or farmed chicken, which is another abomination. Dude, just don't eat it.
That's another thing you disagree with Ferris is not to start a biohack.
Start the biohacker war.
But the chicken.
Yeah,
I think
I
he's
love Tim's
pro-chicken.
work, man. Tim
of
Ferriss is
course.
awesome, right? But in terms of chicken, like, if you look at what's in chicken, you look at what's in people versus what's in a sheep or a cow, the sheep and cow are better for the environment, and it's almost impossible to find pastured chicken that's treated well. Even the stuff that's uber organic, generally it's very high density farming. Like, I live in a place where I get eggs that are dark orange, and I can actually get chicken that only ate bugs and grass, because I live in a small community surrounded by farms. My cow is from a mile away, my sheep is from a half a mile away. And it's amazing, and I eat the eggs because the eggs are like just amazing what they do. It's hard to even crack one open. But when I buy a chicken and go to eat the chicken, the problem there is that you get a little bit of inflammation from the omega-6 oils. So then you throw away all the skin, or you give it to your dog or something, and then what's left is some basically kind of mushy white meat that isn't as amino acid rich as steak would be. So why are you eating this again? I don't understand. Why wouldn't I eat a sockeye fillet or that? You could say, because chicken's cheaper. Except if you go to bulletproofexec.com, I list places that sell grass-fed beef. You can buy a pound of grass-fed ground beef, some of the best stuff ever, and it's going to cost you like $5.40 a pound. And you don't need a pound of hamburger meat every day. So you'll spend $2 a day, $2.50 a day, to feed yourself grass-fed steak that was ethically raised, humanely slaughtered, and carefully butchered. So The only thing that's going on here is you're lazy and you want to go to a restaurant. So when you're lazy and you want to go to a restaurant, that's cool. Have sushi. Just don't eat the farm salmon from Norway.
Don't Norway stuff. Just to wrap up on the Bulletproof, Dave's been very generous, and we're giving away 5 bags of the Bulletproof coffee. Pick the best quote from this episode, and there's already a few gems. Tweet that out, and include the link on YouTube or our Biddy link to our episode, and put at Bulletproof Exec, and we'll pick one out and send you a bag of coffee. I'm kind of sold on this Bulletproof. I think I'm going to make this change.
It's different than paleo. Like, paleo is awesome. I love the paleo guys because so much awareness has come out from this. But there are certain food toxins that are in some of the paleo foods, and the ratio of fat and all is kind of different. So a lot of paleo people love Bulletproof coffee, and I'm a huge fan of paleo, but there's some differences around like fermented foods and, do it the way cavemen did it. Sorry, cavemen didn't have to get exposed to BPA. They didn't have fluoride in their water slowing thyroid function. They didn't have all the pollution we have today. So if you want to get your food like a caveman, you should also get your toxins like a caveman.
Okay, and your diet, you've been described as a kind of a paleo 2.0, although somebody used that. But if they go to bulletproofexecutive.com, they can see your whole chart.
Yeah, it's a free infographic, and it's one page. You put on your fridge, and it doesn't even say only eat these things. It says this is superior to this. For instance, chicken is better than tofu, but beef is better than chicken. So you don't have to always eat the perfect, most green side of the Bulletproof diet, but at least you can make an informed choice. Just shift your behavior a little bit in the direction of better, and you'll improve.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I have to ask you about a topic which is almost synonymous with you, which could be one of the greatest marketing ploys ever done in the history of biohackers, but that's with Provigil, which is a...
marketing ploy? What's up? I took it for 8 years straight. I planned this.
I was saying, when people think of the Provigil, they think of you now, which is just ridiculous. Well, it's great, but you've been a proponent of Provigil for a long time. I believe it started off as a narcolepsy drug. I think it's very possible Paul G might have a little experience with Provigil, but I was wondering if you could tell us what it is, how you've used it, if you took any today, and for people that don't know, if you could explain what it does.
So Provigil is a drug, like you said, designed for narcolepsy. It came out in the mid-90s, and the stuff's amazing. I took it every day for 8 years, and I started taking it because I actually had some brain fog. I was going to Wharton and getting my MBA full-time and working at a startup that we sold for $600 million. So I was very high-performing. This is the only executive MBA that's the same number of classroom hours as a full-time MBA. So it's basically full-time MBA, full-time work, balls out for 2 years. Right. Extremely stressful.
You're in Philadelphia the whole time.
I was actually in San Francisco. They fly the professors to San Francisco for this one. Wow, so I was down on the corner, Howard and Spear Street by the water, by the Bay Bridge. It's a pretty cool location. And they let you clump all your class time into like 3 insane days of like 12 and 14-hour days where you get lectures and then you do work and all that. It was a really awesome experience at the Wharton Executive MBA. I think they call it Wembo West. But that on top of working full-time was just a lot. And I thought, I'm going to try Provigil. I went to the doctor, got a prescription for it. And honestly, the doctor thought I was hitting him up for Adderall because a lot of students want to take Adderall.
Okay. This is 8 years ago.
This was more than that. This was 10 or so years ago. I took it for 8 years straight, and I take it varying amounts now.
Okay.
So I just did like pretty much every day for 8 years. I took off, weekends here and there, but for the most part, it was always there. And
did you consider Adderall?
I tried Adderall first.
Okay.
In fact, insurance companies want you to try Adderall first. Okay. And man, I don't think that's good for you, for one thing. But another thing, man, I don't know, whenever I take it, I'm like, don't touch my skin. Like, it made me tweak a little bit. It was like,
Okay.
So some people can take it and they feel really good. But, people who've tried Adderall, even for long periods of time, a lot of them, when they try Modafinil or Provigil, the trade name for it in the US, they're like, it's like meth, but cleaner. Like, you don't get the buzzy high. You just feel more like yourself, and that's pretty profound. And your ability to pay attention just goes way up.
It could be the new slogan, like meth, but cleaner.
I'm sure the drug companies would just love that. And in fact, people accuse me after I was on the Joe Rogan show, of being like a paid shill for the pharmaceutical industry. I'm like, I'm all over big pharma as like, you guys suck, right? But this is a drug that actually does some amazing stuff, and I think the safety profile is pretty good on it. And people say, there's no long-term studies, but there's lots of things that are sold and then recalled with no long-term studies. This stuff has been around since, the company got sued in 1997 for claiming it improved performance. So they quit marketing it that way. But it still does improve performance. They're just not legally allowed to say it does. So I'll say it does. Okay. It works.
You've never been shy about it. You've never hidden the fact that you've been taking it.
I actually put modafinil in my LinkedIn profile almost 10 years ago, right? And I figured
Consciously.
I figured it was like this. People who see it and know what modafinil is will want to talk to me. And people who see it and don't know what it is will just ignore it.
Again, marketing genius.
It's a neutral term.
Well, it seems like 1 in 10 Silicon Valley executives that I've talked to over the years, they'd see that. And I also put like yoga and meditation and stuff in there. And they'd be like, oh. And all of a sudden they'd open up and tell me all this stuff that they also did, but it was like this little secret. So I'm like, screw it. Why should it be a secret? Like if it works for me, why shouldn't it work for, a 25-year-old who's like struggling to get his brain to do what he wants it to do and working really hard? If it's not going to harm him and it's going to improve performance, or who knows, maybe it will harm him a little bit, but the performance benefits are really great and he judges as a functioning adult that it's what he wants to do, I think it's our right to do that, because it's our right to drink a beer. And honestly, drinking a beer every day is far more harmful than taking a little bit of Provigil, especially if you're not even going to take it every day. So we can smoke and we can drink and we can even use coffee. All of those are drugs. But for some reason, there's a special class for modafinil and it's cheating. Yeah, okay, it's cheating, fine. At least I admitted I did it.
So a lot of things you mentioned have hundreds of years of use, so at least we know the exact side effects.
Yeah, but we know it kills you, and people still do it, right? Like smoking is just bad for you. Nicotine, probably not bad for you. I actually have 1 milligram of nicotine dissolving in my mouth right now.
Okay, guys, I've got some of the nicotine gum. Apparently it's good for creativity and stuff like that.
It is.
I haven't used it that much.
The nicotine gum, though, has some unsafe sweeteners in it. The little lozenges that Nicorette makes, the very smallest ones, I take half one of those some days, a very low dose. But yeah, it helps with creativity and energy, and like it's good for you.
And you're taking some right now.
Absolutely.
Tricky.
It's tucked in right there.
Okay, so now with you and modafinil, it's something you still use? Don't you use as much as you used to?
I took it in decreasing doses. I used to use like 400 milligrams a day, like the maximum dose. And I cut myself back to 200 milligrams. I experimented with dosing. And then
What's the maximum dose you should take?
The maximum dose is 400 a day, 2 by 200. And there's a new version of it out, New Vigil, which is basically the new patented version of it that's one of the isomers that's even cleaner than the normal modafinil, but it's harder to get and much more expensive. So I took the stuff and I'm like, all right. I found that I needed less of it over time. In part, I think because my brain got so used to being in a high performance, like ability to focus whenever you want to, it just gets wired that way. The other potential reason you might want to take it is that if you're going to be tired, being tired itself is a psychological stressor for you. And you walk around going, God, I'm so tired. How am I going to get everything done? Ooh. Well, when you do that, it raises your cortisol levels. So it's possible that when you're tired, but you just take away the tired feeling, that itself may have a protective effect. So if the fact of the matter is that you have jet lag, or that you only got to sleep 3 hours last night because that's what your job or your life demanded of you at that time, you want to walk around as a zombie the next day, or you want to walk around feeling great? Well, feeling great actually is less stressful than feeling like crap all the time. So there isn't a study that says this is true. It's a theory. It's a theory from a physician friend of mine, so who knows? But the bottom line there is that I took it in decreasing doses because I found that I just needed less of it. Then after I went on the Joe Rogan show, a lot of people, especially the day after I was on, Joe was like, well, Dave didn't tell us about his modafinil. And I'm like, dude, I told CNN and Nightline flew the host of Good Morning America to my house and filmed for 2 days. I feel like I've disclosed this adequately to the world. But in case, in fact, sitting in front of me on the desk on the Joe Rogan show was the testosterone that I use. I've been a bioidentical testosterone replacement since I was 30 because that's when my blood test show worked because I used to be obese. And I've been on Provigil for a long time and I don't hide it. So some people are like, well, you've been hiding it. I'm like, no, we just talked about more interesting stuff. So anyway, after that, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to stop taking it for a while. So I stopped taking it for a lot of months. And one of the things that made a big difference there is about 18 months ago, I started using a new kind of brain training that hasn't existed before. And I thought you might ask about this, so I brought a little toy here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm going to show you the coolest looking superhero accessory ever.
So for people listening to us on iTunes, he's got kind of a band that he's placed around his head. Looks like it's got some electrodes and a cord.
If you do like a screenshot, now I'm wearing orange glasses with a blue headband. I totally need a superhero name. I'm sorry. Like I'm wearing spandex too. Okay.
You look like a cool hippie, baby. What is that?
So what this is, let me turn this around. Can you see that? This is called the Upgraded Focus Brain Trainer. And yeah, I have it on Upgraded Self. I'm not trying to sell this. In fact, if you want to get one of these, they're made by the inventor by hand. There's about 200 in existence, and there's a 6-week wait to get them. And what it does is, this is a very bright LED, and over here is a camera sensor. And what it's doing is, it is shining a bright light through your skull, right into your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that you use to pay attention. And then it's bouncing that light off the blood there to let you know how much blood is there. You hook it up to your computer and you play a video game. In the video game, you just concentrate and make it move forward. And when you move forward in the video game, more blood is moving to the front of your brain. So you can raise the blood flow as measured by this device by about, 20%. Pretty amazing stuff. And the cool thing is you get a really fast feedback loop, so you can consciously learn to pay more attention. So I've been doing this since it was a prototype, before it was all, approved for sale and all that. So in my executive coaching practice, I coach entrepreneurs and investment bankers and CEOs and people like that on human performance. So the guys who try this, I tried it 3 times and I had a different day at work. So if ProVigil was something that enabled me to really pay attention, and I've now trained my brain to pay attention in a way that I didn't know how to do, even with all the neurofeedback and the other crazy brain hacking stuff I've done, I think this has actually made me made ProVigil less effective. I don't want to say less effective, it's still effective, but it just doesn't give me the same focus I had before because I already have the focus.
Okay.
It's like I've upgraded the functioning of my brain because I can consciously move blood to the front of my brain, and I don't have to try and do that. Once that ability is there, when I need to pay attention, the brain just goes, oh, that's how you move the blood, and it just does it. So it's kind of amazing what your brain can do when you just give it a little bit of feedback.
It's almost like the plot from that Bradley Cooper movie. By the end, he didn't need the pills because his brain was already conditioned for it.
I'm actually controlling both of you.
Now, Paul and I watched your CNN interview a week ago when we were here, and I want to hear what Paul thinks of ProVigil.
Yeah, I'm currently studying for some exams, and just been sort of taking it on a daily basis. Actually, been mixing some butter in my coffee in the morning as well, and I've just been able to sort of be in a book about abstract topics about object-oriented programming for 5 or 6 hours, whereas before I would.
That's some exciting stuff, man.
Whereas before I needed maybe like half an hour, and then I'd look at Twitter or something and then go back to it. So that's the biggest thing. But what I would have hoped it would make me do is just be smarter and get it faster, which it didn't do. So
it doesn't make you smarter.
It doesn't make you smarter,
but it makes you more focused. And I did a really cool little experiment when Nightline was at my house. And we did one day when I was off ProVigil, and I did a battery of cognitive focus tests. And this was on a website called Quantified Mind, quantified-mind.com. A friend of mine runs it. And this is the same site that we use to do the cognitive performance study of upgraded coffee beans. So it's actually like university verified executive function profiling. And so I went there and I said, what's my response time? What's my reaction time? What's my working memory? Stuff like that. And then the next day I did ProVigil. And it was really interesting. When I was off ProVigil, my response time for questions was highly variable. So sometimes it would take me a minute to come up, well, not a minute, like it'd take me half a second to come up with an answer. And the next one I would get it in like 0.2 seconds, then 0.5 and 0.2. So it was pretty spiky. But when I was on ProVigil, my average was slightly higher, but it was very consistent. So it was a very narrow band. So I could always answer pretty darn quickly on ProVigil. But off ProVigil, sometimes I'd answer more quickly than average, but other times it would take much longer. So the predictability of my response went up. My overall accuracy went up. So things like that change. But if you're looking to like upgrade your working memory, there's ways to do that, but you need to train your brain, and that's going to be a different thing than, and that actually does make you smarter. It raises your IQ. That's a very different animal than taking ProVigil.
You're currently the VP of a publicly traded internet security company. Are you doing that?
Yeah.
And you're also flying around the world giving these consulting.
I usually fly around the world, and I give a keynote about the future of cloud security. So I work for a company called Trend Micro. We're the #1 ranked cloud security company, and I helped to create like modern cloud computing. The very first product I rolled out, 15 years ago, was a provision on demand cloud computing service. So this has been my career. Like I love big complex systems with lots of moving parts and toys and stuff like that. So that's what I do for a profession. And the cool thing is, like, this is a week of vacation that I'm taking this week. So I'm burning a week of that in order to be able to be here for this and to hang out with some of these investment bankers who wanted to hear about upgrading their heads. So this is what I do for fun. Like, this is my passion. But cloud computing is also a passion. So yeah, I'm holding down a job. I do a lot of writing, blogging, and keynotes and strategy and stuff like that for my day job. And then as soon as I'm done with the day job, it's like time to put on the biohacker hat.
So I think there's still some skepticism about cloud, and I think the biggest problem is security. and specifically, it just moves the point of failure from the company to somebody else who you trust. So, how do you what do you think about that? How do you respond to
About the whole cloud security thing?
Yeah.
Security is about operations, and if you're good at operations, you can be secure. Unfortunately, for most companies, cloud providers, where I've spent half my career, are better at operations than most companies. So yeah, someone's always going to screw up or not on security.
Well, in the case of Hurricane Sandy, a bunch of web services went down because there was a cloud warehouse in the area. And so all of a sudden, some company in Chicago may not have their product up because New York is suffering.
Yep.
So there's a lot more interconnectedness in the system.
There is, but the interconnectedness also increases average availability. So it's kind of a long, interesting debate for like a certain type of computer science tech person. But I would say for the most part, what the cloud has done is that it's made big compute really available. And the cool thing about that goes right back to the quantified stuff that I do all the time. And it's that it used to be really expensive and really hard in order to, say, get a lot of data on a server and crunch it. But now, like, there's these amazing companies out there. In fact, here's an example of something like that.
Yeah.
This
device number 2. Go
is
ahead.
not a personal pleasure device.
You put that right up to the camera in front of you. Okay. And for our listeners, it looks like something you would grip with your hand. It kind of looks like one of those forearm strength
It is
trainers.
a forearm strength trainer, but it's got a computer
digital.
on it. In fact, there you can see that come up. These are on upgraded self too. And what this does is it tells you to rest, and then it's going to tell me in a minute to grip. I'm at a weird angle, but we'll see what happens. So I'm gripping really, really hard. And you might say, okay, why would I do something like that? The reason I do that is that not only is grip strength on a daily basis a really good indicator of how you're doing that day. So if your grip is weak, you got exposed to toxins or you didn't get restorative sleep, something bad happened to you. And if you plot this on a day-to-day basis, you can do some cool stuff. But it also turns out if you grip exactly how this device tells you to grip, it retrains your vagal nerve in your body. And when you retrain your vagal nerve, you can regulate your blood pressure. So people with problems there can basically improve the performance of their vascular system in very rapid order.
What's subconsciously?
It's not subconscious. It has to
Okay.
do with the fact that you squeeze not too hard and not too loose in a narrow band, and it actually like tones the nervous system in a way that's amazing.
Okay.
So why is this tied to cloud computing? Because there's a little port down here. It's a USB port. And this thing goes directly to the cloud. So your data gets uploaded, and it gets compared to everyone else. Right? The Zeo, the sleep company that unfortunately just went out of business, I'm kind of bummed about that. Same thing. They have more data on people's sleep habits in the cloud than anyone's ever had before. So if you really want to upgrade your performance and like kick more ass, look at what like 100,000 other people did when they gripped something like this, learn from all of their data and apply that back to you. So this is like completely revolutionary because companies don't really do that on their own. So the ability to upload data from all these crazy devices, these biohacking devices, is awesome. If you're wondering, this is called the Zona Plus. It's on upgradedself.com. It runs about $500. But man, if you're dealing with making your blood pressure exactly where you want it to be, this is a really cool device.
It's crazy hack. So Upgraded Self is a different website than Bulletproof Exec?
Yeah, Bulletproof Exec is a free information site, and I put like stuff I could sell as a book or as like there's lots of very valuable stuff like my best secrets, like the stuff that I've spent $300,000, including the last year where I've spent a lot of money on biohacking.
Yeah, well,
and it's like all that stuff is there, and I don't want it to be too commercial. Yeah, I sell coffee. I have a few other devices. Everything that I put on Upgraded Self is stuff that I use myself, stuff that I give my kids. Like I teach my kids heart rate variability training. My 3-year-old can totally rock it on breath exercises. I don't know if either of you have kids, but you ever see a 3-year-old, you say, stop screaming and take a deep breath. And they go, and it's not a deep breath, and they just freak out more. Well, after a few of these little games where he's like, whoa, I can make the light green by breathing. I go, hey, Alan, take a deep breath. He goes, I challenge anyone with a 3-year-old to get him to do that if you don't have biohacking equipment. It cannot be done. So everything on my website there is like stuff I would give my kids, including coffee, by the way. My kids get a tablespoon of coffee they help me make every morning, and they love it.
Wow, a tablespoon is in just a tablespoon to eat.
A tablespoon of coffee to drink.
Of drink.
Yeah,
to drink.
and they actually get 2 beans each. They love coffee beans. They think they're like peanuts.
Wow, that's the thing that I noticed about you, especially when you talked about Provigil on CNN. You said it makes me a better entrepreneur, businessman, and father. And you have a book that is the Better Baby book as well. And like you don't hear that a lot from your typical entrepreneur. It's usually about the Benjamins and about the IPO, but you do talk about your family a lot. And so
That's why every entrepreneur worth his salt is really working, right? If you're not working to make the world a better place, you probably suck as an entrepreneur anyway. Like, that's what it comes down
I think
to.
You're right. In retrospect, but when you're in your 20s and your late 20s and coming off of a Wharton business degree, you're like, let's go and kick some ass, probably.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with kicking ass for a good cause. And, if you kick ass at work and you're so tired when you come home that you don't function very well, and then you're a total jerk to your family, like, that was not a win. So if it takes a little Provigil at the beginning of the day, which gives you more energy at work, and you come home and you play with your kids instead of like collapsing on TV and watching the couch, dude, Provigil rocks.
Okay. We had a guy here from Denmark recently. He has a book called Winning Without Losing. He's an entrepreneur as well, and he works, he's proud of the fact that he works 35 hours a week, and this whole work-life balance is a really important thing for him.
And he was from Denmark, which is superior to Norway because they don't kill salmon.
So you like him already. You like him already.
Sorry.
So he's Bulletproof approved. But how do you maintain that balance?
The work-life balance.
Yeah, look at you. You're flying around the world right now, and I guess the family's not with you. But how do you do it?
It's really pretty tough. I'm actually burning a lot of vacation this month because when I get back in another week, I'm going on the low-carb cruise. So I'm going to be giving a lecture on the cruise about low-carb diets and all that to a whole bunch of people who are really interested. But I'm bringing the family. Like, we're going on a cruise to Belize. We're going to go have a good time. So I'm getting some really quality time there, and then I'm going to have to work my ass off in my day job because I took 2 weeks of vacation in the same month. So, I manage as best I can. One of the things that works amazingly well is that I work from home. So I get to have breakfast with my kids. And then my commute is I walk about 100 yards to my biohacking lab/home office. It's surrounded by 4 old growth cedar trees, has a little deck overlooking the pond. And it's tough, man. But I work my ass off when I'm there. And then I go in for lunch, and I have lunch with the kids if they're home from school. And I have dinner with the kids. And I play with them, put them to bed, and then I go back to work. Right? So if I had to go into an office every day, I wouldn't be able to do the quality of writing and the quality of work and even like the webinars that I do for my day job. And my life would suck. So if I spent 2 hours a day commuting, this wouldn't work. So kill the commute. You've got to do it. And if your job makes you be there in person, live near your work, you've got to do it.
Okay. And kids can eat Bulletproof, you're saying?
Not only can they eat it, it's the only way you're ever going to be sane if you're a parent. Try and give your kid gluten and watch him go bonkers. Then take your kid off a gluten diet and take him off bad fats, take him off weird food colorings and MSG, and give him lots of butter and lots of vegetables and lots of salmon and beef and things like that, and watch what they do. They get calm, they get focused, their ability to self-regulate goes through the roof. The worst thing ever is if when kids are at someone's house and they accidentally get gluten or some kind of weird omega-6 crap, and they come home and they're like, and you can just see them acting like all these other kids. But when you feed kids right, man, they desperately want to cooperate and they desperately want to regulate. They're just learning how to self-regulate. And the last thing you want to do is be like, you're trying to learn how to control yourself, are you? Here, have some crack. And that's what happens when you give gluten to a kid. It's not even fair.
Would you give your kids Provigil?
No, I wouldn't give anyone under 23 Provigil. Okay. Because your prefrontal cortex finishes forming when you're 23. And it's not a good idea to mess with it until then. And I've had a lot of people ask me that on the blog and all. And let your brain do what it's supposed to do. Would I do neurofeedback on my kids? Yeah, you bet your ass. When they turn 8, they're doing neurofeedback. Before then, it doesn't work very well. If you have ADD or autism or something, neurofeedback, I've seen it do miracles for very young kids. But when you get to be 7 or 8, you can actually picture yourself outside your body. Your ability to be self-aware goes up because your prefrontal cortex really starts to turn on then. Before then, you're basically kind of in a theta state, la-la land most of the time when you're a kid. So it's, some drugs are appropriate for adults and some aren't. And this isn't about, rights. Doesn't an 18-year-old have a right to take Provigil? Probably. It's just a stupid idea, just like you have a right to do other stupid things.
No, fair enough. We had one of our listeners from New Zealand. His name was Esh, and he put a video question for you. And you mentioned MMA fighters earlier, and I think he fights MMA. And he was wondering, what do you recommend for carbohydrate intake for someone like an MMA fighter who obviously probably needs more carbs than the rest of us? Yeah. Just that question.
It depends on your own carb tolerance. On the days you train really hard, having some carbs that evening is not a bad idea. Have them in the evening. It helps with sleep and it helps with recovery. So there's nothing wrong with having carbs, but do white rice and sweet potatoes and the less toxic carbs. The problem we have is that a lot of the sources of carbs that people rely on come from basically seeds and vegetables and things that have very strong self-defense systems, so naturally occurring pesticides and things like that. And even white potatoes, which some even paleo people are saying are okay now, if you look at what actually goes into making a potato good to eat, yeah, if it's a freshly picked potato at the right time of year and it was either not stored or stored properly, it's okay. But there's like 20 different ways you can make a potato make a lot of self-defense toxins, and the chances of you getting problems from eating a potato are reasonably high, which is why they're in the middle of the bulletproof diet. They're nowhere near as evil as eating wheat, which is going to mess you up. So you got to pick the right carb and then experiment, right? So you work out. There's guys who can completely kick ass on no carbs. I don't think there's very many of those. In fact, I think a no-carb diet's dangerous over long periods of time. I gave myself some food allergies. I did 3 months, 1 serving of vegetables a day, the rest fat and meat. And after a while, like, your ability to make mucus goes away. So your eyes are dry, your sinuses are dry, but worst of all, the lining of your gut can't stay intact. So I got a leaky gut because I didn't have enough mucus to keep the stomach acid away from my stomach. So you got to basically measure what works for you. But it's probably going to be, at least 100 grams of carbs at night, and it may be a lot more. But if you do it, just cycle in and out of ketosis. Make sure you're in ketosis once a week, and see how it works.
Do you fast for like a whole day at a time, or 36 hours at a time, or not really?
I'm a big fan of the Bulletproof intermittent fasting protocol, where I basically stop eating at 8 or 9 at night, and then I don't eat again except for Bulletproof coffee with the fat in it. Other than that, I don't eat anything else until 2 or until 6 the next day.
Okay.
So I'll basically go, was that 18 to 22 hours, something like that.
Every day, basically.
Most days, yeah. I mean, the earliest I have lunch most of the time is around noon. And sometimes there's a business meeting, and so like I have lunch an hour early or something. But for the most part, yeah, that's what I do. I did that today. Like, I spent all morning talking with investment bankers and like these really intense guys about, all the stuff they could do to perform better. And I was like, oh wait, I haven't had any lunch yet. Finally, I'm like, it's the end of lunch. I guess I should eat something.
Now, you said you used to get lightheaded when you would not eat, like back when your heavy days, when you wouldn't eat for a few hours at a time. And I used to get that way. And if I started the Bulletproof diet tomorrow, I'm reasonably healthy. I don't eat much gluten. I start with the coffee and everything. How long do you think it takes for someone to adapt and get to where they can do this? What do you call it? What kind of fasting?
It's called Bulletproof intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
And there's plenty of totally legitimate intermittent fasting protocols out there, which basically Lean Gains is a site that has a lot of really good info about intermittent fasting. And Lean Gains even uses coffee. But what they don't do is they don't use the butter in the coffee. And especially for women, it's a big difference. You put women on intermittent fasting. I have a whole post about this people should see on the site. It's like the truth about women and intermittent fasting. Women, over time, when they intermittent fast, it raises their stress levels higher and faster than it does for men, their cortisol levels. So eventually they start getting hormonal irregularities, and they can even lose their menstruation entirely. So you can stave this off by increasing fat, because when you have the fat, your body's like, oh, there's enough calories in the world here. I just don't have to do any digestive process, so I'll keep autophagy going, and you get all these benefits, but you don't get cold and hungry and shaky, which is what can happen, especially when people start intermittent fasting. I also get people who post on the forum like, yeah, I was doing plain intermittent fasting, which is a perfectly good protocol with lots of studies behind it. I'm not opposed to it, but then I hit a plateau, and then I added Bulletproof Coffee, and I went through the plateau. And there's actually a reason that I'm not going to disclose here, because it's coming out in my book on the Bulletproof Diet that comes out probably in about 90 days.
Okay.
But there's a secret about why Bulletproof Coffee is doing what it does. And when it comes out, I think it's going to rock some parts of the paleo world, because it's pretty legitimate science.
Okay, is this your first book?
It's my third book.
Oh, you did the
Better Baby book, which
right.
is like, what do you do and what do you eat, and like what are all the things you can do before and during pregnancy to have kids that are smarter, and kids who will actually be able to pass better genes onto their kids. So this is what you do for basically 9 or 12 months in order to have healthier grandkids as well as to have healthier kids.
Wow.
And my goal in writing that book is I want there to be 10,000 less kids with autism when the knowledge in this book gets out there. I had the symptoms of Asperger's syndrome until my mid-20s. I wasn't formally diagnosed with it because I fixed it before I ever really realized what was going on there. My grandmother has a high-level degree in nuclear engineering. She won a Lifetime Achievement Award for achievement in nuclear sciences. All of my aunts and uncles on that side of the family test very high on the Asperger's scale. And so that, combined with the fact that we had our kids around age 40, age 39 and age 42 for my wife, means that our kids were at very high risk of having either autism or Asperger's. So part of what went into the Better Baby book was 1,300 references and years of anti-aging research, all focused on turning off neurological inflammation and creating more resilience. We put the program together. My wife was actually infertile. She had polycystic ovary syndrome when she was 35. So using this diet, using recipes like the Get Some Ice Cream, which is like ice cream with enough fat in it that it makes you want to reproduce, so you go to the bedroom after you eat it. And you do this sort of thing, and after a while, fertility kicks back in. And we're seeing this on the Bulletproof diet too. I just got this great email. We're putting a blog post up this week. This guy was like, Dave, you didn't put a warning label. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, well, I lost 90 pounds. I had to buy a new belt. He goes, oh yeah, and my wife is pregnant. She's in her 40s. We haven't had a kid for 6 years. We didn't think it was possible, but she lost a bunch of weight too. So it turns out when you get stuff right with your gut bacteria, when you eat enough fat, your hormones actually start to regulate again. So that happened to us. And our midwife said, you guys need to write a book about this because of the 700 or so children I've delivered. Lana has the healthiest midwife speak maternal tissues of any woman she's ever delivered a baby from, of any age. So here's a 40 or 42-year-old woman who has better fertility stuff than people in their mid-20s. And this is a function of what do you do with your stress, what do you do with your food, and what toxins do you not put into your body.
Seems like women would be extra sensitive to that stuff.
They are. They're more sensitive than men.
Reproduction cycle and stuff.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true.
No? Okay.
If we were to invent a test for sperm motility that worked really well, and like every 3
Real
days
time.
we kind of took a little sample, it turns out that we're more sensitive than women over a short time frame. So like the best indicator of your overall health is the health of your little swimmers, right? If your semen are strong or your sperm are strong in your semen, you are going to basically, you can use that as an indicator. But the thing is, you have a 3-day window there. So, I was drinking last week. So, I'm going to reduce my toxins. And over time, vitamin levels matter. But for the most part, it's a short window. But for women, it takes longer. So I suggest 3 to 6 months before you decide to have kids, you need to clean stuff up and get your hormones going right, get the toxins out of your body. And then your chances of having a healthy pregnancy go up. And that's what we're trying to do. And a healthy pregnancy makes healthier kids. And healthier kids make healthier grandkids. And it's actually multi-generational.
Okay.
So that's the first book.
Right.
Second book is called Upgraded Chef. It's ebook only. You can buy it on Amazon. And this is about how do you cook in order to produce less toxins? And how do you cook to taste good and be convenient and be on the Bulletproof diet? So it's got some new charts for the Bulletproof diet version 3, like an early release version of that. Those are in the book, as well as it's really just 3 core techniques and 12 recipes with an infinite number of variations there. So people who do that are like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was that easy to cook something. But it's not just cooking something, it's cooking something with the lower amounts of toxins in it. The temperature you use to cook your egg.
Are you low temp guy? Is that?
Low temp matters, especially for proteins and certain kinds of fats. Whether the yolk is runny or not runny changes entirely what that egg does to you. A hard cooked yolk has oxidized cholesterol in it. It's inflammatory. You put that same yolk on a sunny side up egg cooked in the right kind of oil, it has a different effect on you. So it matters, and I wish it didn't matter, and you could just slam whatever you wanted and live on Snicker bars. So unfortunately, the way it is, best way you can have an egg, toss the white, put the yolk in a smoothie. It tastes like ice cream. That's what ice cream is cream plus egg yolks plus something that tastes good. So
Toss the white.
It's awesome because Tim Ferriss could have my egg whites. I could have his egg yolks.
You guys work
we're
together.
friends.
We got to hook you guys up. And what's the latest book then?
The latest book is going to be called The Bulletproof Diet.
Okay.
And I'm working on that right now. And I've basically got 16 reasons, most of which are just not known to people, about why this is doing what it's doing. As well as, I need actually people who've had really major experiences on it to send me a note about it because it'll have case studies in it as well. So I'd say there's 60,000 words of that written right now. I'm looking to be about 100. And it's going to be a pretty solid book. I'm hoping 90 days, probably 120 days is more likely. And there's just stuff that isn't ever talked about, even in the paleosphere and all that really matters. And there's really great research about it. It's just that sometimes the different disciplines of science don't get connected. Because I'm, a computer hacker, systems thinker, and kind of nonlinear, sometimes I connect things from different disciplines and put them together. And it's kind of intuitively obvious that that's how it works because the results are very clear. And then I'm hoping that we'll get more science around some of this stuff.
It's sort of the devices you showed us, and those Fitbits come out, and people using things like Strava. I cycle and run using this app, Strava. And do you see technology just completely taking over how we measure this and how we go about reacting to it? So I can foresee a scenario where your advice might not work for everyone. Now, it's possible because you haven't tested on everyone.
We haven't tested anything on everyone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point. So, do you see the technology will just completely dominate this sphere going forward?
Anytime there's, say, a healing event, there's basically 3 variables. There's the person who's having work done, there's the technology or the method that's used, and there's the person that's doing the healing. And sometimes the person who's getting healed and the person who's doing healing are the same person, but quite often it's a third party, whether it's a massage therapist, a physical therapist, a physician, or a naturopath or whatever. I don't think technology is going to replace that. It actually doesn't work. And most double-blind studies do their very damnedest to ignore one of the three variables, which is the person doing the healing. And my entire experience in upgrading my performance is that it really matters who you work with to improve your performance. So some people are better at fixing other people than others. And if we don't acknowledge that, it's very hard to do good work. And any really competent physician that I've seen understands that there's an art to being a physician. Any competent healer, whether it's a shaman or an acupuncturist or anyone else who works in a modality like that, or even a therapist, all of those people, it's the person who does the work, the person who receives the work, and also probably does their own work as part of that, and this modality. Technology cannot take over. It's a three-way discussion, and it always will be. Can technology really inform both parties so they make better choices faster? Yes. Can technology measure whether that acupuncture treatment raised your heart rate variability? Yes, it can, and yes, it does. So we can verify some treatment modalities, especially the woo-woo ones.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about homeopathy, right? Like, well, there's nothing in there, it can't work. At the same time, I know some pretty effective healers, including an ex-Johns Hopkins surgeon who now does homeopathy as part of his work. So either he's a total idiot, but wait, he was like a really well-educated guy who's like cut thousands of people open and now uses this to cut less people open. Like, okay, maybe he's a nut job. Maybe I'm a nut job because I'm even willing to think about it. But actually, I just want the data. I'm willing to suspend disbelief. You show me the numbers. And I think that the number of sensors and the cost of sensors is dropping enough that we're going to learn some really interesting stuff about what works and what doesn't work. And one of the things we're going to find that doesn't work is drugs sometimes don't work the way we think they do. Surgery doesn't work sometimes the way we think it does. And some of these crazy, healing modalities that people think work probably don't work. But we're going to get the data. And that's what this is about. And if you don't have cloud computing, you don't have devices that measure data and send it up there and let us compare different things, we're never going to understand the human condition the way we can now. And we never could have done this if we hadn't built the cloud and if we hadn't built distributed sensor networks and the internet itself that's now pretty much omnipresent.
What are the kind of sensors? I mean, I've never actually seen this kind before either, but I'm sure there's a ton out there.
I mean, this thing basically has a really, number one, the LED itself being really bright and, not burning a hole in your head and all this.
But you're sensing blood flow.
This is a blood flow
So
sensor,
I imagine, I don't know, people just have a sensor for whether they have AIDS or something,
there's systems on a chip. People are certainly working on that. And there's the implantable insulin sensors. There's a new skin prick that can do cholesterol, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So it's profound what's happening, and we need a lot more of this. I'm working with a company called Talking 20. They're using a mass spectrometer, and you just prick blood. And just actually quite a lot of blood out of your finger. It's more than a normal little tiny diabetes monitor, so you have to kind of wring your finger out. But you get 3 or 4 drops of blood on a little blotter, and you put it in an envelope and send it in. And for $20, they tell you what's in there. Like, they'll look for a protein, and they'll tell you the levels. That's awesome, because this used to be like a many hundreds of dollars thing. So it's one thing, okay, now we have the ability to do these relatively low-cost sensing things, but then who cares if you have the data if it's all broken up everywhere? We need to be able to crunch the data together. So we can say, 500 people who are in this age range of this gender, who live at this latitude, have this going on in their blood. No one ever thought about that before. We've used this technology in big retail, like Safeway, going back for almost 20 years. And companies like Nielsen, that does Nielsen Media for TV, yep. Nielsen IRI also does who buys what groceries when, and they can tell you, Friday night is beer and diapers night and stuff like that. No one's ever done that at a big enough scale for what's going on inside our bodies. There's electrical signals, there's magnetic signals you can measure coming off the heart, because it's an electromagnetic field, right? So what do we know about that stuff? Just about nothing. You alone, if we took every instrument we could and we instrumented you, you could fill up all of the cloud right now. Just the signals coming off your body. And that sounds like an amazing claim, but it's not.
I can believe it.
Because how many samples per second are we going to do? Well, an infinite number of samples per second will fill up the cloud, right? And there's so many different things we could sense, right? So maybe we should just stud your body with EMG sensors to know exactly which muscles fire. And then we could do an analysis, which fire in what pattern, why? And you find out that, you're shrugging your shoulder in a weird way and you didn't know it. And if you stop doing that, something good happens. Who the heck knows? But there's so much cool data, and we're just at the beginning of this.
So that's all for the future. For you, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? I'm inspired pretty much every time someone, reaches out and says, like, I just lost 30 pounds in the last 2 months, or I just had this profound change. So people who are willing to like sit down and do the work, I find that really inspirational, as opposed to sort of, the armchair skeptic who like, I've got a 50-pound gut, but that doesn't work. So I'm like, if you're willing to step up and, take a swing, and whether you win or not, like, I think that's incredibly inspirational.
And go ahead.
In terms of, people who, really inspire me, guys like Ray Kurzweil are really interesting. Stephen Wolfram, like, these are guys who have really big brains. They're really interesting guys. But like Kurzweil, yeah, he takes a big handful of vitamins, kind of like I do. Like, we're in alignment on that. He, believes he can live a long time. I don't actually think I'm going to upload myself to the internet. I love sci-fi and all that stuff, but it's probably more likely we're already uploaded, like more like the Matrix, right? So, however all that stuff works out, maybe we'll have the data at some point and we'll actually know. But what does inspire me about Ray Kurzweil is that before he did all of this kind of aging stuff he talks about now, this guy like wrote some of the first voice recognition software. So like people who are doing cross-domain things, like modern day sort of Leonardo da Vinci people. So I'm really intrigued by people who just go out there and hit problems from entirely sideways perspectives that other people just didn't think about. So people who are doing that sort of work just really are cool.
Okay. What do you want to be doing in another 5 years or 10 years? Do you think it's going to be completely different than what we see you doing now?
It's really hard to look at it on those time frames. I mean, if you'd asked me 5 years ago what I was going to be doing, I didn't know I was going to be living in Canada. I didn't know I was going to be working at Trend Micro. I didn't know that my blog would have 500,000 people a month coming to check out the stuff that I've been doing for 15 years anyway. Like, the future has a lot of questions in it. I do see myself not going into an office every day because I'm done with that shit. Will I, be highly productive? Yeah. I'm in the process of buying about 15 acres, and I'm going to be raising my own sheep, that's for sure. My own chickens. I'm not going to eat the chickens. I'm just going to eat the eggs and then like feed the chickens to the dog. I'm totally legit.
Jesus.
And dogs have to eat. Right? So, stuff like that. So I'd like to actually do more around specifically soil ecology and the whole system of producing food. And what I learned from Upgraded Coffee, of going through making the Bulletproof process, it is so precise. When you talk to someone who's a master of meat, let's say, like I did a podcast the other day with my friend Glenn from Alder Spring Farms, and I mean, the stuff, he spent 20 years looking at cows the way I look at coffee, and the little details are so important, and we never look at it from a performance perspective. Everyone out there today looks at things from two big perspectives. Everyone, like the big companies and all, they look at the cost of something. How do we make it cheaper? And they look at the taste of something. How do we make it taste better? Like another guy who I admire is Nathan Myhrvold, the former CTO of Microsoft. Okay. Guy's total badass, right? He also pretty much popularized sous vide cooking in the US. And sous vide cooking is when you have very precise laboratory grade temperature control. So I was a fan of sous vide back before we knew this was Nathan Myhrvold. There was a website that had lots of info on this, and he was just posting as like Nathan M. And I had, at the same time he was doing that, a sushi cooker, like a commercial rice cooker, and a laboratory temperature controller, because it was the only way you could control your temperature. So I was like, what temperature should my meat be? And Nathan finally published this $600 volume of books, and he has this recipe for French fries. And you have to cook them like 3 different oils, 3 different times to make the most delicious French fry ever known to man. So I admire his scientific prowess and the way he's willing to apply laboratory techniques. But dude, he's fat. Nathan, if you're listening to this, sorry man, I love you. But here's the thing, he optimized for taste. Screw that noise. I want to optimize every single thing I can in my life, including my house, including the land I live on, including the lighting in my house, including the food I eat, including the way that food is made, for human performance and wellness. It is not about economics, and it's not about taste. My experience is that when you optimize for human performance, it tastes really damn good. And if it doesn't taste good, you need to find out why, because that's probably your body telling you something. Bacon tastes good, butter tastes good, steak tastes good, vegetables taste good if you dip them in butter. Like, okay, right? So we need to think about this, because when you do that, you're not just doing human performance, you're actually doing quality of life. And this gets much more into like the real reason we're all here. You're not here to just make a lot of money and be miserable. You're not here to be really cheap and minimize costs and have a big bank account. Like, you got to live. And the way you live is you look at how do you live more. And you do that in an environmentally sustainable way that makes you feel really good and leaves something left for the next generation. And that's how to live. So what am I going to be doing in 5 or 10 years? More of that.
Okay. Do you think Bulletproof, or do you want Bulletproof to be like a household name? Or do you want it to be more a diet that more people follow?
I'm certain that the diet, it already has, 100,000 people doing it. It's really hard to measure, but there's 500,000 unique visitors a month, and it keeps growing. So I'm pretty sure some people are doing it based on the feedback. So in a long time, will it be, I'm on the Bulletproof diet? I don't know. To be honest, if people are mostly thin and mostly their brains are turned on and they aren't walking around in a fog all the time and they're not dying of cancer and diabetes and heart disease, I don't really care what the diet's called. Like, they can call it anything. So like, I want that kind of change, particularly for kids. I think it's just a little bit mean to feed shit to kids and then ask them to perform and to do the act of growing up, which is hard enough to do in and of itself. So like, I would like to think my kids,
a lot of the side effects you don't see until much later.
It's true.
That's the problem.
Yeah. So I'd like to think my kids have a bit of an unfair advantage because they eat the right foods, but I'd also like to share that advantage with every single other kid out there. And if we do this right, we will actually change the environment around us to support the kind of food that's useful, which is locally grown, locally produced. It saves fossil fuel, it works better, and it completely messes up big food. So there's going to have to be some changes here. And if not, what's going to happen is already happening. 1 in 8 couples can't reproduce now. My wife's fertility consulting practice is going crazy because people, like, they read the book and they're like, whoa. So then they call up and they do Skype coaching sessions and they look at their hormone levels and they look at their nutrition, and all of a sudden they can get pregnant again without doing strange hormone injections and IVF and all that stuff, just by like cleaning up what's in their food, just by reducing stress levels and stuff like that. But if for the people who don't do that, the 1 in 8 who can't reproduce now, it'll be 1 in 4 in another 20 years. And our population problem will solve itself if we don't fix this. So I worry very little about there being too many people for the carrying capacity of the earth, because we're messing ourselves up so much intergenerationally, epigenetically, that we just won't produce that well. And when we do reproduce, the survival rate will be lower. It's already happening.
Dave, I feel like I could keep you here for hours. You're like an onion. Like, once I start doing things, I find other things. And I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts that you almost got a minor in religious studies. Is that right?
I was one class away from it, yeah.
Okay.
At UC Santa Barbara.
We could probably talk for hours about that. Just for people that want to get your podcast and just your other stuff, how do they get a hold of you? What Twitter should they use, and what Twitter should they not use? I think I screwed up. I was going to reply to that tweet, but then I thought people might see the wrong one. So
here's the deal, and I appreciate you asking that. At Bulletproof Exec is where I talk about biohacking. I put up all kinds of cool personal stuff. At Dave Asprey, which also has a lot of followers, is my cloud computing guru account. It's got, 7,000 followers, and almost all of them are geeks in cloud computing and the security industry. So if you care about the conversation we had about big data, cloud computing, security, encryption, I will tweet about that there, and I tweet regularly on that account, but it's kind of bifurcated. Biohacker is Bulletproof Exec, the other one is Dave Asprey. So I appreciate if people keep them in the right space, but I answer coffee questions on Dave Asprey sometimes. I just try not to. So people can find me on bulletproofexec.com. And if you're interested in the stuff I talked about, or you want to try my coffee, thank you. I appreciate it. And I tell you how to make relatively healthy coffee without following the Bulletproof process on the blog. So yeah, I offer coffee that's the same cost as the Starbucks high-end stuff. That's on upgradedself.com. So if you're interested in the upgraded focus brain trainer and the Zona Plus and things like that as biohacking devices, these things are really hard to find. Most people haven't even heard of these before. So they're up there. And I do have researchers who work for Bulletproof Exec, and right now the site supports them, not me. So I put the money back into paying for more infographics, paying for people to help edit books and things like that. I just want to get all this info out there. I feel like I have 5 books worth of info in my head that I just want to share. So I appreciate it if you check out Upgraded Self, try the Upgraded Coffee. There is a study that we're publishing soon about the difference in cognitive function of this coffee versus other normal mass market brands. It's real science. What else? BetterBabyBook.com is where you can go to read about the Better Baby Book. If you're thinking about having kids, or if you're pregnant, that's the place to go. And if you see this and you want to buy the Better Baby book, it's on Amazon. Thank you so much for doing that. We're working on improving our sales on that. I just want lots of people to see the knowledge in that book. I'm kind of wishing I had just given it away for free instead of going through a publisher, but I'm thankful Wiley sold the book. And thanks, Gary Tobbs, for introducing me to your agent. That's how I ended up selling my book, because Gary helped me out. So more power to Gary Tobbs. Read his latest book, Why We Get Fat. It's an awesome book.
Very cool. And we are giving away 5 bags of the Bulletproof to the quotes tweeted from this episode, and there have been some good ones. So tweet those out. Include the at London Real TV and the at Bulletproof Exec handle, and we'll be giving those away. I think we're going to ship those from America, wherever anybody wants them in the world. So that's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
You got it, man. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just we've had a lot of people on that talk about diets and this and that, and I've watched a lot of people, but I don't know, with you it feels like, I don't know, you're not selling it. You don't have to convince me. I don't know, and I like the fact that you take some chances and just say things like, yeah, I take Provincial. What? And so many people seem to dance around little diet things, and they don't want to be too controversial, and sometimes you got to jump in.
I hope I'm wrong about some of these things. In fact, my website says at the bottom, we certify that at least one item on this website is wrong. Dude, I know I'm wrong. That's why the new book that comes out, Bulletproof Diet 3.0, because the first 2 versions can be upgraded. Everything can be upgraded. It's a process. We'll always upgrade everything out there. So
right. The most important thing is we're asking the question, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And thanks for your show, man. This is awesome. I really had a good time, and you've got just a great series of podcasts going on.
Cool, man. Well, thank you very much. We've been working on this for a few months. Thank you so much to Paul G., who was our guinea pig for the week. The Modafinil guinea pig. 5 days?
Yeah, about a week, and I also did the coffee as well. Although I didn't do your coffee, so I don't know what the difference is going to be. I'm still going to experiment some more going forward.
We'll talk later about that. Yeah. I'm going to jump on the coffee myself and make a few changes. My girlfriend, I'm going to give your ebook, because and she's old school, and we have a 9-year-old stepdaughter, and she's making her cakes, and I'm like, Jesus, honey, stop giving her sweets. But it's this maternal instinct. But you're killing them. You're killing them, honey.
Here's a little trick. She's giving them cakes. Make the cakes out of sweet rice flour.
Okay.
It's still full of carbs, but at least it's not full of gluten, and the kids will benefit, and you can make pretty darn good cakes out of that stuff. Okay. It's sticky enough.
I like that compromise. I like that. Okay, very good. Cool. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please subscribe. If you want to see the cool glasses that Dave is wearing, come and see us at YouTube channel London Real TV. I think we could talk to you all day about the glasses, but you want to get more about Dave, go to his website, and we appreciate that. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. It's always kicking off here at London Real. I just wanted to thank Xbrain. They sponsored this episode, knowing you were going to be here. It's xbrain.co.uk. They sell all the Onnit products. I believe they're going to have your coffee soon.
They do. They actually are carrying it right now. They've got the coffee, and they've got the MCT oil, which is like a requirement to get the full effect from Bulletproof Coffee. That recipe has to have MCT in it. Okay, good. Because I've been doing coffee with coconut oil, and I usually serve it when people come here, and they love the taste, but it's only 15% of the right medium chains, right? See, I've been listening. So you can go to Xbrain. If you're in the Europe or the UK, sometimes it can take 3 or 4 weeks to get stuff from the States. Yeah. And I got some Alpha Brain from Xbrain the other day, and it took 3 days. So check out the company. They got all that stuff. I need MCT oil, Bulletproof Coffee. Is that it? Glutathione is really good stuff too. I believe they'll be stocking that. And Whole Foods in the UK would have that butter, the Kerry butter, or I don't know if I didn't find any at the Kensington Street one the other day when I went there. But they had something that was probably grass-fed. It looked like it, but they weren't that clear on the label. But I know that you can buy Kerrygold Irish butter all over the place. You probably have to go to like a Marks and Spencer or something. Okay, Kerrygold Irish butter. I'm on it. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Until then, it's about the journey. I wish you guys both very well. Thank you. Okay, take care. Thanks, man.
So, and then there was very rapidly, so that was my first case report, which came out of the SAS.
So you were in the SAS already? I was in the SAS already. And it's rare for a doctor to go in the SAS, is that what you're saying?
To pass selection, to actually become a badged soldier, so you become part of the regiment as a soldier rather than just as a doctor.
And why the SAS? And for my American people listening,